I am just so delighted to be here with all of you on this special anniversary day for Shumei. And I'm thrilled and honored to be invited to share a few thoughts this morning with all of you. And I feel that we're celebrating this wonderful anniversary, 26 years, Shumei America. And I also feel that we're celebrating this experience of being together here in this room, so many people from so many different countries as I look around and as I've met you in the courtyard. And we are here together in a spirit of warm-heartedness, kindness, generosity. And our world, given the difficulties and challenges that Tamayo Sensei was talking about and that we all know about, our world needs this kind of collective harmonizing energy from all of us. It needs this. And so I'm really grateful to be here today with all of you sharing this energy which will emanate out from here. I currently live in northern New Mexico, as you heard, with my husband, Jan Hoffman, on a small organic farm where we now are practicing natural agriculture on some of our acreage. Since learning of Shumei several years ago from our dear friend Sharon Frankomont, and attending Shumei events in both Crestone and California, we've had many wonderful and healing experiences with the Shumei members that we've come to know. Given our own experiences, my husband and I, and our connections to indigenous cultures and Asian cultures, when we met Shumei and learned about the core principles of healing and the appreciation of art and beauty, and the cultivation of food, healthy food, through a spiritual relationship with the land, we felt an immediate connection. My husband became a member in Crestone in 2015, and as you heard, I became a member right here 2 years ago in Pasadena. Over these recent years of practicing Jo-Rei and participating in Shumei events and working side by side on our farm with Shumei members, and these are apples behind me actually from our farm as well as in that picture, we keep learning more about Shumei's founder, Meishu Sama, and the core principles and practices that emanate from his vast vision and his life work. We keep learning more also about Japanese culture, as well as both the challenges and the gifts of cross-cultural engagement. From an early age, I became fascinated, remained fascinated, and in awe of the incredible diversity of our human experience on this planet, the diverse worldviews and ways of being that all of our different cultures represent. I pursued anthropology in college and in graduate school, and in my early 20s I went and lived in Papua New Guinea with an indigenous tribe there for my dissertation research, and it was truly a life-changing experience. Over many years now of working with diverse people in diverse settings, as an educator, as an organizational consultant, as a researcher, as a trainer, and just going about my own daily life and observing myself, I have come to believe and view that most people, when faced with any situation in any moment of our lives, tend to approach that from one of three different perspectives. And I call these perspectives the cultural perspective, the cross-cultural perspective, and the transcultural perspective. So I wanted to share a little bit about this model with you all today, because I believe that the more we can bring awareness to just where we are coming from in any given moment, where we are operating from, the greater our capacity to actually consciously respond for the greater good of all, rather than to unconsciously react. So I'm going to just talk briefly first about the cultural perspective. We are all cultural beings. Most of all of us, I would say, are born into a national or ethnic, or in some cases perhaps a subculture within a larger society, whether in the US, or Papua New Guinea, or Japan, or Mexico, or anywhere else, that teaches us from birth to embrace a particular set of perspectives and values and ways of being. This is positive because we humans are social animals. We need to feel we belong. We need to feel part of a larger social community. Yet, an aspect of cultural conditioning also can bring a feeling of separateness when we meet others from other cultures. A feeling of wariness sometimes, of judgment even sometimes, about those who are different from ourselves. And even if we're not aware of it, we often come from a feeling our way, my way, is the right way when confronted with difference. I'm sure you can relate to that as you think about your own experience. And yet, we also live in a world where it's increasingly likely that we find ourselves engaging with those of other cultures, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance. This can feel disorienting or even threatening. It can lead to conflict. And it can also be a beautiful experience of learning and positive change and expansion. And since no one person is exactly alike, we could actually view every individual as a mini-culture unto himself or herself. And so every engagement that you have with another, you could consider a cross-cultural experience. It takes awareness and skill, vulnerability, and the desire to learn and to grow to successfully navigate those boundaries between cultures, whether between cultural groups or between two individuals. It doesn't require giving up one's own culture. We're not asked to do that, but it does require a respect for difference and a willingness to consider our own conditioning and to explore new values and new ways of being. From this comes an expanded sense of self and a cross-cultural perspective that becomes part of one's identity. When we're operating from that cross-cultural perspective, we're able to build bridges across those borders and boundaries and find areas of common understanding and shared agreement. I call this the me and you perspective, whereas the cultural perspective is the me or you. So now me and you. And as we saw in the previous slides that were shared of what's going on around our world these days, we also realize that we are in a particularly critical time for our planet, for our species, not to mention the vast numbers of other species whose existence and survival depends upon the decisions and actions made by humans. And we're finding that even the cross-cultural perspectives that we may have expanded into are not sufficient to address what we're living and facing now. Many of us in many parts of the world are being asked to reassess deeply held beliefs and long-standing behaviors as their negative impact on our fellow humans becomes more evident, and non-humans as well. And clearly, as we look around us and perhaps experience it in ourselves, there is resistance to that demand for radical change and growth. Yet, challenge is also opportunity. And everywhere we can see more and more evidence of people responding to this emerging understanding of our interdependent world. The experience of our common humanity, one species, sharing one planetary home, leading to a more widely understood transcultural perspective. When one is grounded in transcultural experience of the world, apparent boundaries disappear, and deeper human values can be identified that supersede conflicting cultural values. You remember that experience of looking at the earth when we could first see it from our earlier space exploration. There are no boundaries there, you can see. This is the we, us perspective, the transcultural. My view is that we have the capacity to become aware of and to hold and utilize all three of these perspectives with awareness, with attention, with practice, and shift from one another as we orient toward desired outcome, which is so beautifully expressed in the theme for this year's anniversary, serving self, serving others, serving all. If we find ourselves in a situation that feels oppositional or polarized vis-a-vis another person or another group, or if we're finding ourselves in the midst of some kind of confusing cross-cultural misunderstanding, we can learn and develop to shift to the transcultural view within ourselves. This opens the way to deeper common ground based on values that transcend these apparent boundaries. As you heard, I'm currently on the faculty of an organization in Santa Fe called the Academy for the Love of Learning in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And Santa Fe, for those of you who know it, is a very culturally diverse city, small city. Historically, Native Americans, Hispanics, and then Anglos have been the major population groups there, but now many others from Mexico, from South America and Central America, as well as from all over the world, are in Santa Fe. And this diversity is clearly represented in the public school system there in Santa Fe, where I and my colleagues have been doing some work. One of the programs that we offer is called El Otro Lado, which is Spanish for the other side. It's using an art-based curriculum that can be adapted for kids of all ages or also effectively with adults. Participants explore aspects of their life stories, their past experiences, and their hopes and dreams for the future through poems and collages and totems and touchstones, various kinds of art and musical experiences. This program is being implemented in several classrooms in Santa Fe now, several different schools. And the students and teachers together collaborate, guided by Academy staff, to really share personal and cultural identities at a very deep level. As knowledge about one another grows, the social bonds obviously deepen. And in this way, participants really can open to the experience of cross-cultural engagement with their classmates and more come to know each other and enjoy rather than feel confused or threatened by the diversity that is there. Over time, the exercises in El Otro Lado contribute to the development of a transcultural perspective, a sense of shared humanity, as people hear each other's stories, and there's an identity that we have so much in common, way more than we have different. At the end of the school year, there's a wonderful event where families and teachers and students from these different schools all come together and see some of the arts experiences and celebrate. And I brought a really short video that I want to share with you. It's less than 3 minutes. That was made at a recent El Otro Lado event. And it's based on one of the exercises that we do in which people write very short poems inspired by the prompt, I am from. I am from. So as you watch this, just think about where you're from, not just geographically, but where you come from in your life experience. And we'll just share this for a moment.
I am from. I am from the smallest country in Central America, El Salvador, and I'm also from Scotland.
Vengo de un río que da vida a dos países.
I am from a rodeo ground by the river that divides 2 races and 2 ways of living life.
I am from horseback riding, county fairs, and 12 sheep 5 goats.
I come from the heavy sound of Mother Nature. I come from the Star-Spangled Banner.
I'm from the nation's capital, and I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I'm from the East Coast, and I'm from hip-hop music.
Rostros de alegría, esperanza, optimismo.
10 ducks, 1 chicken, 5 horses.
Yo soy de calor y sudor, soy de fruta y sabor, vengo de la tierra que alimenta, vengo del sol que calienta.
I am from an endless blanket of stars that peers at you every night.
Vengo del desierto, vengo de la tierra que huele a humedad.
Yo soy de Centroamérica, soy de pupusas y queso fresco.
Sonrisas, cantos de aves, canciones que reflejan un sentimiento único de orgullo.
I come from a family who are proud to be Mexican.
We come from a place where people love us.
We come from a place where people love us.
I am from gray skies in winter and nights sleeping under the stars in summer.
Vengo del mar y de la sierra.
I'm from my mother's Australian accent and my father's Italian last name.
Olores de flores, de frutas, de naturaleza.
I'm from the land of quesadillas.
Yo soy de Máximo, soy de Carmen Eugenia, soy de Violeta Raquel, soy de Joaquín, soy de Cayetano.
Vengo del amor y de la pasión y del color del corazón. Yo soy de fruta y sabor. Lili Carvajal.
I'm from a place where there's peace and harmony, where no one gets hurt. I come from green, white, and red, my home.
Ese es el otro lado de mi Colombia.
I am from Deer and Oak, and I'm from the country.
Vengo del suelo que habla en el verano. Vengo del sueño de 2 culturas.
I come from the tornado.
But in the end, I'm a human being, endlessly curious, just like you.
A love tornado, that was what the little boy said. I come from a love tornado. We all carry imprints like this of where we come from and what's impacted us. And what emerges for most people as you explore that I am from comes from all 3 of those perspectives that I mentioned, the cultural, the cross-cultural, and the transcultural. And I want to just take a couple of minutes now and let you all explore this for yourselves. I'm going to give you some instructions, and let me just give them to you first, and then when I say to begin, we'll begin. This will just take a couple of minutes. But I want to invite you to turn to your neighbor, however you figure that out. Turn to somebody you're sitting next to, and you'll say hello, and then each one of you will just have a minute, you'll just take a turn to just share spontaneously what comes when you say to yourself, I am from. Just try 3 or 4 different lines. Just each take a turn. It's not a conversation, it's just you're giving yourselves the gift of really listening to one another. I brought this exercise to a workshop recently, and this is, I'll just read you the 4 lines that came from me when I wrote my poem, and then we'll do this together. I am from salt water mixing with fresh water, from animated family conversations around the supper table. I am from broken-heartedness that found its way to joy. I am from a blue and green planet that shines bright in the dark sky. I had some time to get poetic there. You don't worry. Whatever. But just take a moment now and in 2s or 3s, just share a line or 2, I am from, and just see what comes. I'm going to give you a few minutes to do this. Go ahead. And I'm going to ask you to stop because we need to finish here. So just finish your line. Quiet down. I just have a few things to say at the end of my talk here. I hate interrupting the buzz. It's really beautiful, and I can tell that a lot of stories are being shared here. Thank you for experimenting with this, and take it home with you. I want to say just a few things as I finish this. My personal interest, and I think our most important work right now, especially given everything that has just come out in the last week, really, even from scientists who are talking about the decade that we have to really turn our world around and turn ourselves around as human beings. We really need to be focusing on and becoming more aware of and strengthening our capacity to move into the transcultural perspective. What some, I think I do, would think of as our divine nature, our spiritual selves, telling our stories, appreciating our differences, and finding unity in our diversity is going to give us the capacity and the strength to care for each other and for our Mother Earth in time, I think. This is the path forward. This is what my mentor and teacher, Joanna Macy, has called the Great Turning. And we're at that moment in time right now. Spiritual teachers from many diverse traditions have identified the same transcultural values that are alive within the human spirit and that, if practiced, will guide us forward toward our own evolution and greater well-being for all. Compassion, empathy, generosity, kindness, humility, gratitude, humor, love, and others. The recent work of neuroscientists, particularly Richard Davidson at the Center for Healthy Minds at the University of Wisconsin, with whom we've been working, is affirming what our spiritual leaders have been telling us for a long time. Davidson and his colleagues have discovered that there are 4 independent circuits in our brain that have to do with our lasting well-being. The first is our ability to maintain positive states. The second is our ability to recover from negative states. The third is our ability to focus and to keep our minds from wandering. And the fourth is our ability to be generous. Tamao Sensei reminded us, and I want to repeat what he said, that Meishu Sama urged us to become people who reduce the suffering of others. Meishu Sama said, your actions should be for the benefit of your fellow citizens and society. And you should be as sure as possible that what you do is just and good. When asked what is joy, the Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, ultimately, our greatest joy is when we seek to do good for others. It's how we're made, we're wired to be compassionate. The Dalai Lama recently said, we must develop the sense of we. Once you're able to develop that sense of common humanity and the oneness of humanity, then naturally you will want all others to be free from suffering and enjoy happiness. I was deeply touched and inspired when I learned that Meishu Sama sees our task as creating paradise on earth. I have really taken this to heart. When I feel despair because of all the bad news one hears and of all the suffering that humans are enduring in so many parts of the world, I find my footing again by coming back to this. I find there's always some small step that I can take that feels like it's contributing to this vision. So I want to quote Tamao Sensei again and just conclude this talk with the words that he used. I think they're so perfect and powerful. Let us all work together to create a better world.